And welcome everyone to this week's Maternity and Midwifery Hour. Now, this is session 8 of season 11 this evening. My name's Sue MacDonald and I'm the curator for the Maternity and Midwifery Hour and the Maternity and Midwifery Festivals. And it's my pleasure to be hosting this session this evening with the lovely Janine McKnight Cowan. Here she is. So welcome, Janine. Now, as we always do, we always put our guests on the spot to share a moment of the week. And Janine is being a little bit greedy tonight. She's going to have 2 moments. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's really great to be here, and I'm really excited to be back and joining you all again from international to nationally. But my moments of the week, I'm so glad I've got 2 because I feel privileged to have 2. First one is quite amusing. So I've been able to put together an IKEA flat pack triple bunk bed this week. And well, yeah, I know that's amazing because literally it was harder than any exam I'm ever done, just keeping to tabs with the numbers. Secondly, the best news that I've had this week, and my co-author Leonie, who's hopefully online in Australia listening, the book, our book, C-Section Recovery Manual, which you're showing there, thank you, was shortlisted in the top 8 innovations for 2023 by the Self-Care Forum, and that's a huge accolade. Having done 5 years work, knowing that all the time it's been about something as a resource for women, and it getting that Self-Care Forum award this week, it's just been my moments of the week. So yeah, I've had 2, so thank you for letting me share those.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, one for the flat pack thing, because I always, as you were talking, I was thinking, do you know, that's something that should have been in the school curriculum, not necessarily IKEA, because, there are other makes available.
Yeah.
But you didn't, especially as a female, I was never allowed to do woodwork, and I'd have loved to do that.
That's very true.
I always have a problem with flat packs and have to always find the men in my life to wheel them in to do that. But also there's the book. How delicious. Now,
yes,
look at this carefully. It's on your list of resources. Excellent book. Very easy to navigate. It's a real dippy in book and fantastic. I think for women and families, but also for midwives and student midwives, because it does give you some really good pointers as to what can help women. But we'll have more of that later, because I'm not going to steal Janine's thunder, not a little bit at all. Now, I'm just going to do my usual little welcome to everybody. And I understand there's someone from Cyprus. I'm not sure if there's anyone from the USA. Sometimes we have the Minnesota midwives. So if you're there, hello and welcome. And welcome to anyone who's new to the Maternity and Midwifery Hour. And if you haven't accessed us before, I hope you're going to enjoy this evening. I know you will. And there's lots more, because this is everything that we do on Maternity and Midwifery Forum is recorded and accessible after the event. And it's all kept and looked after by the lovely Matflix. So if you go to the Matflix link, you can find anything you'd want. The trouble is now it's getting quite huge. So you'd be spoilt for choice and you might just meander around. Well, you'll enjoy it. It's a bit like going into a massive library. So if you've got your revalidation coming up, or your student doing an essay or an assignment, or your midwife doing an assignment, come to that. It's a very good resource to access up-to-date, up-to-the-minute materials. It's all free. If you want something a little bit more targeted, you can access the box sets, which are developed by Jenny Hall, who chaired today's Student Experience Festival also, and she pulls together themed box sets with lots of little extra activities. So that's really good if you're really wanting to focus on certain topics. So I'll recommend those to you. But they're everything else free to access, fantastic resources, and also we love you to share. So if you enjoy this evening, and I'm sure you will, when you get the recording of it, share it with your colleagues. It makes a really good discussion thing. And if you're trying to do some of your reflective stuff for your revalidation. Fantastic way of doing it, and it's fun. It's really enjoyable, because I know as a midwife we all love to share and we all love to talk and kind of share stories and that sort of thing, and this makes it's a really good resource to get channel that through. So we came from, of course, the maternity hour came from the COVID pandemic, because as we hit lockdown, can't believe 3 years ago in March 2020, it was 2020, wasn't it? We realised that midwives and student midwives needed some information and some way of accessing it, because there were no study days, no conferences, no festivals. So we put this on just as an hour a week to connect people and also provide lots of information. And initially we did put a lot about COVID, because it was very much an emerging knowledge base at that point, and we've kind of carried on, so we're still here. Not so much on COVID now, but it has kind of, it's always behind there because it informs our practice still, because it's still around. But we go on to different topics, and I hope that you enjoy what we're going to talk about. If you have any ideas of things that you think, well, Sue's never put this on, I think it's time she got someone to talk about it, and I know someone who could talk about it, just get in touch with the forum. You could put it in the chat box if you'd like, further down here, and it'll come through to me, and we can put on lots of things, because season 12 is approaching next year, so I'm looking for interesting things for that season. Anyway, big thank you. And Janine and I were talking just earlier about the NHS and health and hospital care and things, and it really does make you realise it's all going on. People are working really hard providing care. So, as I always do say, and I really mean it, a big thank you to everyone who's providing that care and doing their very best in very difficult times, very tricky times and stressful times. So good on you. Just look after yourselves the way you look after your patients, your women and families and babies. And I'm coming on to the news now. It's still dreadful events in Gaza and Israel, and we know that's a lot in the news, and we need to be very knowledgeable about what's going on and not make assumptions and not make any huge decisions about things. I mean, it's not down to us, but it's a very, very difficult time. And for a lot of people, it's a very scary time in whatever position they're in. And I think we as health professionals need to be especially sensitive to that. Anyway, now today, on to more light things. It's been the student experience event in London and online, and I was able to join online, so it was delicious for me. I couldn't go to the live event, but it looked fantastic. I could see lots of students being active there, and it was a really good programme. So congratulations to all the students who were there and the team for a fab day. I particularly enjoyed Jackie Williams from the NMC, especially when she was talking about the challenges for students and for them learning, and for teachers providing that learning and support, and for the midwives supporting that. So it was really, and then we had oh gosh, there's just so many sessions. I'll probably think about it a little bit afterwards as well. And I want to also say big congratulations to the student trailblazer winner, Selena Palmer, University of Leicester. But there were some fantastic, highly commended student midwives who also got highly commended trailblazers. And that was Deepa Santosh, who's now qualified, Amber Morell, Jess Falk, and Vicky Gua. It's Gois. Fantastic. What fantastic students. It made me very proud to be within the midwifery family. So good on them for that. And just to point you to also some good articles available on the Maternity and Midwifery Forum. There's some on maternity services, which was from last week, but it's still relevant if you haven't had a chance to read it. And also midwifery education, all by our lovely Neil Stewart, and they're all on the resources sheet. I also need to say the Scott Health Awards happened this week. And that's so congratulations to Jane Howie for winning the Scott Health Awards Midwife Award and the Amma Birth Companions for winning the Tackling Inequalities Award. Well done to them. And I'm looking forward to meeting some of them up in Scotland, in Edinburgh, in end of the month, in November. And also, just to remind people, the 8th of November today is the birthday of Guru Nanak, Sikh. This is a Sikh festival, and on Sunday is Diwali, the Festival of Lights, and also Remembrance Sunday. So there's a lot going on at the weekend. But it's exactly 10 minutes past 7. What perfect timing! So I'm going to now come to the main meat of the evening, which is Janine McKnight Cohen, who's going to be talking about caesarean section recovery and self-care. Now, we've had Janine before, which is why we've got her back again, because we couldn't get quite enough of her. So we're going to get some more this evening. And so I'm so pleased that she's able to make it. Now, she's a nurse and a midwife. She's got wide experience in the NHS as a nurse, and she's now an author. She's also a Queen's nurse and was the RCNI Community and General Practice Nurse of the Year 2019. And was awarded the British Empire Medal for services to nursing. Fantastic. And she's also the author or the co-author of Caesarean Section Recovery Manual. There we are. You'll know what it looks like in the bookshops now. So welcome, Janine. The screen is now yours.
Oh, thank you. I'll just say another thank you and welcome to everybody who's here this evening, because I know you're not all going to be in the midwifery family, but you're going to be in the maternity family. So in one way or another, I'll share my screen, ready for us to go through our slideshow. There's always that little hole.
It takes a time.
Have you got it? There, we've got it. Got it? I'm sharing the screen. Can you? Yes, you can see it. Brilliant. So basically, let me just go back. I'm here this evening to talk to you about advocating self-care following a caesarean section. And you know why I chose this topic? I chose this topic because I feel it's so important just lately. Someone said to me just last week, "Oh, Janine, caesarean sections, it's your thing." Well, it's been my thing since 2017, simply when a student midwife said to me, "Janine, that idea you've got and that way you're talking to that mother, it's really fantastic, and I really think you should be sharing that idea." And that idea was born out of the 5 guide idea, which we're going to go into later on in the presentation. But it was a student that inspired me to submit an innovation to the RCN Foundation Innovation Awards. And that was about celebrating practice, 100 years of practice. And since then, I've been driven to think about caesarean sections and why they've become my legacy of my career. Well, I'm now in my ruby wedding years of being in the NHS. That's 2 decades where I spent in acute care, nursing and midwifery, and then 2 decades plus 5 where I've been in primary care, leadership and management. I don't think of myself at the moment as a nurse or a midwife or a healthcare leader. I think of myself in a series of A-style people. And I'm going to tell you that I think, first of all, the title gives it away. I see myself as an advocate for women and families. And I've been given the role as an ambassador with the Personalised Care Institute, and I'm also a Core 20+5 ambassador. I also think of myself as another A-style sort of person, as an activist, and not only an activist for healthcare, but I'm also a soroptimist, and I'm also an advisor. and I'm an advisor for Surgical Site Infection Network and the National Wound Care Strategy. And then I became another A-style sort of person. I became an author by accident during the COVID, as Sue said, when resources were down. I co-produced with Fiona Rastus, who should be online this evening from Australia, a manual, C-section recovery manual. And that A part of me was all my experience, knowledge and skills coming into the fore and being put into words as a legacy read for mothers. Two more A people I am. I'm altruistic. I like to put others first. And my final A is that I've become a bit of an avenger. No, I've not got my big gold pants on, but I do put those on at times when I have to, when I'm particularly wanting to look at women's health rights. But just as we stay on the title page, my overall aim has been to empower birthing women to value their own recovery, their own needs, and support all healthcare professionals who do look after women with some simple tools to share with mothers and make their life and their working day a little bit easier. So tonight's webinar, and thank you for letting me be here again and being your only speaker and not having to share the platform. It is really about advocating that self-care following the C-section, and it's how we support and enrich anyone tuning in this evening, and the importance of self-care and the importance, the difference it'll make. It's a gift that we'll be able to give through knowledge, through conversation, and the quality of our conversation. And I'm going to be giving you some top tips. So it's all about getting a good balance between what matters and what is meaningful. It's a bit like for those of us who are in the maternity trade, it's about really looking at a little bit like our work-life balance. So really, there are some good pictures and some graphics in here. I hope I don't upset anybody, but there will be some graphic pictures. And for caesarean section, for most student midwives, it's the first time that they're going to see blade to skin. Because, you know, within your training, the first time you do see a caesarean section, it's quite magnificent, but it can also be quite traumatic. And it's the first time that some mothers actually have surgery, and it's major abdominal surgery. And it's the first time that some partners ever get to wear the scrubs and enter a theatre. So whatever your journey into theatre is, I want to help you and those around you who are personally involved to be able to self-care following that experience. So what are my webinar aims today? I'm hoping that we can explore the rising rate in caesarean sections across the UK. That's important because they're on the increase. So you'll be seeing what, and I'll be able to present that to you. I want us to discuss why healthcare at home is an important topic and why it allows women and why we should be helping women to enhance their decision-making skills, and share with you the 5-guide bundle of care to support you in clinical practice. Behind me, you'll see a hand, and we're going to go through what 5-guide is. It's a visual tool, and you're going to go away knowing how to use it. But then I want you to embrace more openly the benefits of self-care and how you can continue to support birthing mothers to process what's happened to them with health information. And even after you've discharged them, you'll still be making a difference to those families and those women. I want you to be able to gain some ideas and explore the components of self-managed care and enhanced care with top tips, how we can use some certain products, our training, and the quality conversations that we will have with women. And finally, I want you to take something away with you for you to do, and I want you to explore a positive change for you in your local maternity services and the care offer that you offer. So let's have a little look at where we're at here. Slide here says, are current rates of C-sections rising? Now, they are, and we're going to explore some data. And some of this data is nearly 2 years old. But the beauty here in front of you, you've got some great infographics. And the red highlighted 52%, 41% and 45% you can see here are a breakdown of the percentage of caesarean sections that have gone on within the infographic here that you can see within those hospitals. So statistically in England in 21 to 22, there were approximately 203,746 caesarean sections performed in the UK. 44% were planned. So we knew we were going to have one. We'd made a choice, and before the onset of labour, we were prepared. But 66% were unplanned, and they were performed during labour or following an uneventful induction of labour. Between 2011, 2012, and then another 10 years on, 21, 22, the number of procedures performed annually increased by approximately 40,000. Now, these figures are really important because as we go through the presentation, I want you to jot down, remember, and keep some of these figures in your head. But the percentage of total births in that period, 21-22, are recorded to have increased from 24% to 35%. Yet when we look at the infographics, in the first three infographics that I'm showing you, actually 52%, 41% and 45% are C-sections. Let's have a look at unmasking some more C-section rates across the NHS. What I like about the infographics is that it's shown on Instagram, it's shown on Facebook, it's actively talked about on maternal and chat websites. Women can see them quite clearly, but basically the Instagram is putting a set of figures up there. But if we go again along here, 30%, 36% and 39%, we can see it's telling us a story around the increase of caesarean section rates across the NHS. The infographics, I can say that are the prize-winning application of our maternity and neonatal voices, breaking down data so that women can see what is actually happening. But I've just chosen a small selection of what we can see with regards to C-section data. Let's have a little look here. So in this slide, I want to talk about policy versus reality. Caesarean section, is it literally a choice? Is it a dilemma? Is it a personalised care investment? For me, personalised care, this is how I've ended my NHS career as a personalised care project manager. And what I've valued from personalised care is that the values it gives individual service users, the voice of what matters to them the most is so important. How they can have control over how care is delivered, how care is given, what choices they make, and the preferential needs of that individual. So personalised care as a choice and an investment is not only policy rhetoric, it's also a gift for us to be able, as a service user, to be able to ask questions, demand to know more, be able to say what matters to me, rather than the medical model of things that are just done to us. So it's an investment in what it is we want. And that policy rhetoric with regards to my statement there is caesarean section, an NHS dilemma, or is it an investment, is because it's backed up by policy rhetoric. So in Better Births policy, it started there really with personalised care, putting women at the centre of care and the decisions that they've made. And then in recent years, personalised care has not exclusively been given to maternity services. We're using personalised care more in primary care, GPs, pharmacies, new roles have been created, healthcare coaches. So people are asking more, demanding more from a NHS that is under a lot of strain. It represents a big shift by the NHS in its 5-year forward policy. And it brings us up to date with personalised choice being part of the long-term plan. It's all about the money versus the care. We cannot and have not got an endless budget in the NHS. So now where we're at, we're in maternity services, we have personalised care plans to support the choices that women can make. And one of those is continuity of care, although in some regions that has had to be halted because obviously we have a dilemma with workforce, and services have had to be changed in order to be safe and in order to manage those effectively. And then our other policy and recommendations have come from other reports like the Ockenden reports, obviously recommendations. But here what I'm presenting to you as well tonight around the dilemma side of it against the policy side is that the average cost of a caesarean section is around £7,000, and that's if obviously looking at it, that's not going into private healthcare, because if we really could add up how much it is for the anaesthetist, for the time in theatre, for the days that you occupy an NHS bed, the monetary costs are much more expensive than a vaginal delivery. So again, when we talk about choices, it's so important that we think about antenatal care, that we help women to make the right choices. Sadly, you know, with every operation, there is also the risk of other things that can happen to us. And surgical site infection is one of the most cited post-caesarean morbidity data that we have. Even pre or post operative intervention rates are relatively high. And unfortunately, 1 in 20 women will suffer a surgical site infection post-surgery. Now, it is actually higher, and I've numbered some references there. It's higher in women who have emergency sections. And most surgical site infections are not diagnosed until after discharge from hospital at around day 5 to 15. Day 5 to 15, there's a big change in who sees women. There's a big change in the clinician who sees women. It'll go from maternity care and quite often going into health visiting care. And the cost of managing surgical site infections post C-section is around £5 million annually to the NHS, which is roughly 2/3 of that is for hospital-based costs and 1/3 is for community-based care. Because if we look at the timeline at the bottom of how long women stay with us after a C-section, we can see that women are most likely to be discharged at around day 1. Women don't stay in hospital very long after a C-section unless there is a need to have intervention, or there may be some other issues. Twins usually stay in a little bit longer, or to establish breastfeeding, or if there are any obvious physical difficulties. But throughout the trajectory there, women will be seen around 7 times. So let's have a little look at why is healthcare and health-related self-care care. It's fundamental. Let's have a look at the problem here. Early discharge. Well, early discharge as a problem is going to limit the opportunities, as I've said, for midwives to perform wound checks beyond day 2 to day 10. Solutions around that, obviously, it's important that we think about shared care, which is predominantly where we work with other co-productive teams. For example, how we work with our health visitors, how we work with our GPs, how we work with tissue viability teams, how we manage women to support their own self-management, and how we look at discharge cooperatives, how we actually support women beyond our discharge date, from hospital, from community midwife, onto health visitor. And another solution around that, about early discharge and wound checks, is obviously, I'm going to go through later on in the webinar, the 5 guide and the teach back. It's how we can impart this information so that women can become part of their own healthcare at home team. Another problem there we've got, that women often come to postnatal wound clinics or postnatal clinics because of staff numbers. Women are having to leave home after a C-section, and it could be anything to day 2, day 3, travelling in cars to come and see a midwife in a midwife-led clinic. And that's very difficult for some women who've had a C-section. And as I said, the onset of problem of surgical site infections is around day 5 to 15, and 1 in 20 women will develop a surgical site infection or a wound dehiscence. So self-care as a solution, again, is very important. And the daily scar tracker, which is in the book, around self-management. Now, I've got here not a makeup mirror to check to see if my makeup looks nice there or anybody. The importance of this mirror is that it cost me £1, but you'll see in one of the images later on, one of the slides, the importance of a wound check at home with the purpose of having a wound check mirror is so important. And the education of how you can encourage a mother to become part of her own wound care team, and how she uses a mirror to check her wound. And as another solution is the opportunity for online education resources, discharge videos. A problem around communication between healthcare professionals is usually around day 10 or 14, when acute services and maternity midwifery services then change and hand over care to health visiting teams, because the communication around that is very, very scanty. There is no state of wound discharge handover quite often for a woman who's had a C-section. So the quality of handovers, if they're not recorded, if it's not data written, you can have one health professional not knowing what has happened to a woman previously with a previous healthcare professional. And that, as an agenda in itself, is part of the operating procedures that can happen within organisations. Another problem is that, wound care training and competencies vary. And a solution to that is how we access competency-based, role-specific training. And I've highlighted in here, just shared with me this week from the Surgical Site Infection Network, is a great little video about looking after your surgical site wound on YouTube. And I know you'll get access to these slides, so it's worth doing the hyperlink to that. Another problem, discharge information. It's sporadic, not consistent. Well, in the future, it can't be like that, because we've got solutions coming. We've got national wound care standards that are going to support us. We've got surgical site infection networks. We should be looking at having standard operating procedures. We can have quality improvements. We can have innovative midwives creating work with their maternity voices to create great maternity patient information leaflets so that they can take home. Some women have reported that it's a problem that once they're discharged, it's very baby focused. Well, we've got to advocate self-care, family care, and the importance of sharing information with women that their wound check is as important as us doing a baby weigh and doing the baby's heel prick. And establishing breastfeeding. All of these things are so important, but there's so many things that we as clinicians have to remember. Caesarean section wound care is getting a big boost from National Wound Care guidance and NICE guidance. solutions are around standard operating procedures again. If we have those in every unit, we'll be able to have consistency and sustainability, equity, and equality in what's happening with wound care for all women, nationally and internationally. And then wound care costs are escalating. They're escalating because the rates are going up. I've told you that an average one can cost around £7,000. So that's a big draw on the resources of the NHS. But we need to reduce the risk, and prevention is better than cure. We need to educate and share the responsibility for our care after discharge so that we don't have increasing surgical site infection and wound dehiscent issues on top of the expense of a C-section. A mother's experiences of caesarean care as a problem, it's been negatively reported on Instagram, on Facebook, in the media, and you know, there's a lot of work going on to put back, to give back, to listen to women. And through Maternity and Neonatal Voices, I have to say that, you know, they're a great platform for you doing your surveys, for you to get in your maternal voices heard, and then putting that back into the clinical practice and innovations within your local maternity nursing services. And finally, a huge problem I've seen in the press, a lot of health organisations on the naughty step. And I say the naughty step because it's, you know, the Ockenden report, legislation, a lack of zero tolerance by members of the public, they're all valid there. You know, we need to be honest, and we need to have solutions about how we're going to put right these wrongs. And quality improvements and innovation are the way forward. Now, caesarean recovery, and as I've said, what's happening at a national level. Policy's there to support us, but we need to understand, you know, what isn't there. You know, we've got the long-term plan, which is absolutely idealistic, and we should be working towards all of the things within the policy. And if we use personalised care, shared care, supported self-management, some of the things we are going to be able to achieve. However, if I think also about what's happening at a national level, from Nursing Midwifery Council, we've got obviously competency issues where potentially there may not be role-specific training on wound care. We could find that the first time we ever come across a wound as a health visitor, we may have had a background in mental health nursing, or we may have had a background in learning disabilities. And we have to look at our competencies to know that we have a duty of care to speak up if we're not competent with wound care or any issues that we're coming across for supporting women with their caesarean recovery. National Wound Care Strategy are working towards developing strategies that now will become more familiar with ICB boards and hospital institutions, because they'll have to take notice and they'll have to create operating procedures. Just as the Ockenden report has said, we can't be on the naughty step. We've got to always be on our game. We've got to be always improving and developing our quality, risk-free, safe maternity care so that women can enjoy having their babies and there isn't that knock-on effect of the naughty step scenarios which we find ourselves in, and can be quite debilitating to the service and the profession. So when I look at this, on moving on to slide 8, could you interpret and act on some of these wounds as clinicians? And they are quite graphic. But those of you who are not nurses and not healthcare professionals who are online tonight, these pictures are so important to me because I've come across so many wounds like this as a clinician, and that has led me to be the speaker I am today, to be that A person I've told you who I am. Because these wounds mean something to that woman behind that picture. And it's what matters to these mothers that really matters to me. And that's what self-care is all about. It's about how we can interpret a wound when it's seen, and how we can act, and how we can signpost, and how we can prevent, and how we can improve, and how we can make better things for women who have surgical wounds that can become like this as they progress through their postpartum recovery. We need to be sepsis aware, because we know C-section is major abdominal surgery. So we need to be able to share with women, what does a good wound look like? What does a bad wound look like? Why do you want to use your mirror? I know it sounds a lot to have in our backpack of knowledge for the short time that we have with ladies, but these are so fundamental. Caesarean section wounds. What is a caesarean section infection? A surgical site infection. What's the difference between a wound? Some healthcare professionals without appropriate training won't know the difference. We need to also be looking at, if we don't tell women, they'll forget. Show me and I'll remember, but involve me and I'll get to look after myself, just as I'm saying there in the quote. Mental health and women's mental health and trauma is so important, because it's all related to the issues around recovery from caesarean section. And we want to reduce any opportunity for an increase in any obstetric violence, any obstetric upset, any emotional upset. Pain management, bladder and bowel movements, mobility that's reduced, protecting and safeguarding our women, raising concerns as clinicians if something's not right, or you haven't got the competence, or you see something and you didn't know what to do with it, or you came across something and you had to refer somebody. Protect the profession, protect the patient. We want to improve equitable access to care, the availability of recovery services. Now, in the new National Wound Care Standard, they talk heavily around scar massage, but scar massage is not available on the NHS. So we have to think about what women can afford and how we can also impart that knowledge and skills for self-care and recovery, and access to physios, health visitors, GPs, so that they know who they can call when and if it's needed. Antenatal education is so important. We have to talk more about caesarean sections, because as the numbers I've shown you, they're increasing. And if 66% of women weren't expecting to have a C-section and ended up with a C-section, we have to talk about the good, the bad, and what is likely to happen in order to get women prepared for the possibility. Our postnatal communication has to be health literate, and we have to consider how we cater for all cultures, religions and complexities. And we have to have a support network with our families, our parents, our grandparents, our partners, so that everyone else can help us to recover. Because if we focus on breastfeeding and attachment and bonding, they're only two components of the transition to motherhood when you've had a C-section. If we don't focus on their wound care and we don't help signpost them to resources that can help them to recover, then we're forgetting some of the what I said in the opening statement. You know, it's really about what we can do, what matters, and what a difference we can make for women. So how can Five Guide help you in practice? Do you know, we've got the power in our hands to start that conversation, and it's so health literate that it's not reading, writing. It's the power of what we've got in our hand, because literally it's a digital world we're in, and if we use our digits, we can digitally help share some information. It was developed after that student nurse heard me using this to a lady and just saying to the lady one day, do you realise you've got up to 5 layers healing? 5 layers: your skin, your fat, your muscle, your peritoneal, and then you've had an incision into your womb for your delivery of your baby. It'll take 5 or 6 weeks to heal. Once the power of your hand is used to explain the anatomical recovery, it's amazing the first time you use it with a C-section woman, because quite often women would say to me, well, nobody's ever told me that before. And five guide, you know, it's so simple to start and open up your conversation on self-care and on your health promotion messages. Everything else, you'll have consistency, you'll have sustainable resource there. It's free, it's visual, it's easy to be interpreted, and it complements all your other self-care resources. It's on screen there. There's a great teaching video for you to follow as well on YouTube. But it's a sign of parenting to get moms to understand what's happened to them, so that then they are not afraid to ask for others to help them to recover. So let's go back to the reality again on the mandated home visits with regards to the reality of visits here. 7 mandated visits. And in some areas, I know that some of these are even reduced to between the day 2 and the day 5. It may not be a midwife, it will be a maternity support worker, which they may not look at a wound, and they may not have the competency and skills to spot those differences at a time when a wound could be breaking down. Because if you recall, I said between day 5 and day 15 is the classic time for the 1 in 20 women to have a wound breakdown. If we get 7 mandated home visits that last approximately 30 to 45 minutes in our postpartum period after discharge from hospital, we're lucky to get 4 hours with a healthcare professional as a new mum. That leaves 41 days of self-care opportunities where you, with your skills, knowledge, can impart to a mother what she can be doing in those 41 days. That's quite powerful. I had never really thought about it until I looked at self-care and what it actually meant to how many days I would be in a position to be having to look after myself and thinking, am I doing the right thing in my recovery? Here we've got the self-care continuum. And if we look at, from Self-Care Forum, if we look at day 1 on my right, where we've had major abdominal surgery for whatever reason, why is the self-care continuum and the self-care agenda so good for women? We want to empower them. We want to empower them to care for themselves, because we know we've got to let go of them over a period of time. It is more cost effective to the health service. It increases our own personal responsibility for our health and our own healthcare needs. And ultimately, as I've said, it will ensure some form of financial stability on the NHS. Where are we on the scale as a mom? As I've said to you, day 1, you're in pure medical care there. You still have the need to have professional overview and being seen. But if I've said to you there are only 7 mandated visits, and I'm back on that slide, this is the transition of where self-care is so important. It is so important that we take a mum on a journey to go from acute care at surgery to primary care within her recovery. And we share that care, and self-care becomes combined to then becoming pure self-care once you discharge them. However, the NHS is going to always be there for these women, these mothers, these families. It's the transition and the timeline that I wanted to just emphasize over that 41 days in the postpartum period. And really, what I want to really emphasize there is there are 7 pillars of self-care, 7 pillars around where we can help women in developing an understanding of what self-care is. And it's how we give women something to believe in, And it's how we as clinicians also have something to believe in and not just something else to do, because we have enough to do. We certainly have enough to do, but it's how we as a workforce, with our pearls of wisdom, can make a difference that can continue to make a difference even after we've discharged mothers. So if we consider the pearls of wisdom, we need to impart good knowledge and health literate information. The 5 Guide is your classic way in. It's consistent, it's sustainable, it's award-winning. It's your first conversation that you can have with a caesarean section lady. It'll allow you to go into talking about her mental health and well-being. If you use a teach back method all the time, you can then reiterate that. Did you understand what I was saying? Well, do you realise how many layers you've got healing? And if she can then relay back to you, well, I've got 5 layers healing. And don't think just when you look at the skin, that's healed, because you've actually got another 4 or more layers inside that I'll take to heal. And the woman is obviously then taking in the information around what abilities she'll have for her physical activities. She'll be able to learn to know her limits. She'd have hopefully got her support network sorted, and generally eat a good healthy diet, do risk avoid activity, not smoking. All of these are your health promotional wisdom and pearls that you can pass on. Good hygiene. It's so important to reduce the bacterium around a wound. So obviously good wound management, how we cover the wound, what we wear, and the rationale for using products in the self-care period. We've got 41 days here where we are not constantly seeing health professionals. So we want to make mothers aware that antibiotics, we don't want to use them all the time. So if there is a wound and is a problem and you are using your mirror, how we can get you seen early with a doctor, how we can use products to support our wound, and how we can manage it. So our pearls of wisdom are really important in how we ensure that women in those 41 days on their own are doing great healthcare at home. This is a slide that really shows you a little bit of reality of what it's like for mothers at home. Washing, cooking, cleaning, ironing, bleeding, aches, pains, breastfeeding. All of this is going on, and all at the time we're learning how to be a mum at the same time, as well as recovering from major abdominal surgery. Let's have those quality conversations, because the quality conversations that you can have, and this slide, it always amazes me. You know, do you need anything? And then she says no, but literally look at the things that she needs there. As a mom, she probably, you know, would love to tell you, if you ask me what matters and you really can listen and you've got time to listen, you can help me to achieve those things. Because what is happening to some mums is, you know, they're in pain, they haven't had a shower, haven't had a wash, haven't had anything to eat, and they really don't want to trouble you. They're quite stoic. Don't want to be seen to be suffering in any way or shape or form. But it's a sign of good parenting to say, actually, I'm not coping well. It's a sign of good parenting to say that. And it's how we have those quality conversations to encourage mums to tell us what they need. So caesarean section mums, literally, you know, we can help them with their practicing. We can help them by, you know, creating a supportive network. We can help them by choosing something simple, handheld mirror. We can ask them to tell us their concerns. We can ask them to invest in a daily nap, get a chore list done, eat well, ask somebody to do me some lunch food packages, you know, have a little look at the possibility of understanding my inner healing by using the 5 Guide. We can remember that our discharge is not that you're healed, we're still available to you. We want you to know who to contact. So we're creating a social model of care instead of sticking to the medical model of care. because we expect them to inject themselves with Clexane. We expect them to take their prescribed medications. So if we think about self-care, we can also help them with the other sides of their recovery. The book's packed with loads of ideas. It really is around self-care, recovery top tips. But I did say that when I opened up the invitation, that I would ask you to look at your own possibility of change in your own organisation. And I'm going to just go through very quickly because of the time. I would like you to recognise your own training needs. I'd ask you to say to yourself, what sort of change agent are you? It's self-care next week. Why not become a champion? Ask your local maternity service if they've got a caesarean section standard operating procedure. Ask yourself, am I competent to assess wounds? And ask yourself, have I the tools then to document individualised care plans? How can you make a difference by doing what matters? Does your maternity service have a personalised care champion? If not, why not become one? Think about personalised care as something to believe in and not just something else to do, because this is what we do. And help mothers to understand why self-care is so important and hand back some responsibility for them by giving them some simple tools to help themselves. And how can we consistently maintain equity in caesarean section recovery? I did this, wrote a book with Leonie, as you've seen, and then decided just before I was leaving personalised care position, I helped the Maternity and Neonatal Voices of Derbyshire put together a survey, of which, going through the list there, what upset me the most is that 52% of mothers reported they felt comfortable to monitor their own wounds. So women are more than happy if they've got the knowledge and skills to self-care and monitor their own wound. And they favoured a more personalised wound care plan by 83%. Show me, tell me, and I'll monitor it. And Scar Tracker, which is in the book, is an amazing way of keeping an eye on your scar. So summarising and coming to the end of this presentation, self-care is not no care. So self-care is about individuals understanding and practicing activities that protect them more, protect them in those 41 days. We're not there. It doesn't mean we're abandoning them. It's about supporting self-care and empowering their own control. People mustn't feel or be made to feel like they can't seek help. They don't want to, they don't want to interfere with our day. They know we're busy and they need to know that they can come back to us because we don't want them suffering any ill effects. And Self-Care Week, as I said, next week, you can become a champion, and they've got a fantastic lot of resources on there. And they've given us the book, the award this week, which is absolutely fantastic. So my digital thank you to you tonight is, remember, it starts with the power you have in your hands. You have the gift to pass over these skills to mum, and you will help mums to take control of their recovery. I've popped that on there, Sue, because I think it's a great way of getting the book to be shared amongst clinicians, but it's a great way for also mothers to learn how to self-care for themselves. And anybody who's watching tonight, you don't have to be in the maternity profession to share the book, because it's cheaper than a bunch of flowers, and it means so much more to be able to self-care. So don't ever underestimate the impact your conversation that you can have with mums and the families. Give them the confidence to allow them to self-care for themselves. And it's a sign of good practice to encourage self-care, but it's also a sign of being brave and being a good parent and a good mum to ask for help. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Janine. And lots of references there as well, which is fantastic. We've run over a little bit, so we have a little time for questions. And I think what's interesting, what I was struck by with the wound care, which is a huge part of what we need to do. And it struck me that in order to support women to make sure they're knowledgeable about wounds and healing and what a bad wound looks like, we ourselves need to be very skilled and knowledgeable about that. And I'll just put that in people's minds, because it's kind of certainly this is a very good resource to dip into and to use with women. And I think Janine's point about checking your own competency and proficiencies is vital, because we really can't just, and it isn't, and I think Janine made a fantastic point about self-care isn't just about saying, oh, well, you carry on and just do it without us. It's about helping the woman notice, a bit like when we were talking last week about noticing if there's a problem with the baby. The woman needs to notice herself. You as people will know, you know when there's something not quite right, and it's always nice if someone's told you, well, look out for if it's a bit red, or if it's a bit swollen, or it's a bit painful. This is what you need to do. So thank you for starting us off. We have a question, and I'm sure usually our audience are very good on questions, and we have a good question from Laura Hallam. Thank you, Laura, who says, why is surgical site infection more likely in emergency cesarean sections? Good question, Laura.
Well, it is a very good question, and the references that are at the back of the presentation do give you a great resource there. But in the experience of an emergency section, think about what's happened to a mom. We've got more bacterium likely, and there is that thing that some women will shave themselves before they have a surgical, before they have a birth. And we don't want women to shave themselves if they're having a surgical birth. So, you know, all of that preparation coming into thinking I'm going to deliver vaginally, one of the most likely infection is a shaved pubis. And even that as an antenatal conversation, you know, about preparation for a vaginal birth should be had, because if there is a 66% increase in the data of women having caesarean birth, we want to reduce the infection rates as much as we can. And that's just one example. Please don't shave.
Don't shave.
Don't shave, because hair grows back. It can obviously also cause difficulties with wound dehiscing, because it causes difficulties with the eruption of a hair follicle, which can also cause difficulties with the management of the
suture.
Of the surgeon.
Actually, it's funny. It's funny, isn't it? Because years ago, it used to be the thing. You had to shave. Oh, yeah. And so, of course, some women, their mums might be saying to them, you need to shave down below, because they'll want you to shave. And of course, that's all old stuff. So bringing it up, it's a really good conversation. I mean, I'm aware that some women like to keep their pubic area very hair-free. A bit itchy, but you know, it's a very personal choice, but it's a very good discussion to have in there, isn't it? To sort of start things off. And I love the sort of pearls of wisdom and the partnership, but actually you make it, in a way, you make it sound quite simple, Janine, because when I look at the boxes, knowledge of health, mental well-being, physical activity, healthy eating, risk avoidance, and then good hygiene, that's a lot of information. How do we make sure that we don't overload women, because there is such a lot of information for them to kind of calibrate, isn't there?
There's a tremendous amount of information that we have to share, mandatory share. You know, we have our own checklist to do. It's how we have that interest and that crucial what matters to me most conversation is the classic line, because things matter to people in different ways, and I think if you get to the very source of what matters to a mother after a caesarean section and in her recovery period, quite often they can be something that isn't on your clinical checklist. So it won't be a Clexane injection. It won't be, the fact that I'm in a lot of pain. It'll be, is anybody actually looking at my wound? Does anybody want to look at what's going on there? And can I actually see it myself? Do I want to look at it? Some women are horrified by the surgical site wound it themselves, but then if without a standard operating procedure, so some of these women won't know when to remove their dressing, and there's no standard dressing for a start. Every organisation will have their own type of dressing that. And if you are a diabetic or have a large BMI, you might have even a mechanical style of dressing on. So it's getting to the what matters as well as doing the tick list. Those are the pearls of wisdom, because every day will be a different journey for that mother. But what we're trying to do is risk avoidance, and that is the safety that we're trying to provide, the safety network around them, where if we know the risks, we can avoid them, and prevention is better than cure. And it's having that first crucial conversation with women. The 5 Guide opens up the opportunity to talk about you, your wound, your recovery, your body. And until we get them ignited, and obviously, they might be thinking, well, I've got to fetch the kids from school, or
that's it.
Actually I haven't had anything to eat yet, and I wish you'd go because I just want to have a cup of coffee. There are so many things, but what matters to that mother needs to be drawn out at that particular time. And what matters is that we need to prevent that 1 in 20 women who will have surgical site infection and lead on to other things. And we also need to remember that they are alone in that postpartum period, self-caring, healthcare at home, and it's what we can do to top up those golden bits of information by the resources that we can signpost them to.
And really, it makes me think that just as you have a birth plan, you need a post-Caesarean plan. Really, for the woman needs to be able to think about it and plan it. And by opening up that discussion, that really takes it there. Now I'm going to go to another question, because we've had a question, actually, funnily enough, we've gone back to the shaving issue. Christine, thank you, Christine. Good one. She says, is even waxing not advised as the hair grows back at a slower rate? I know little of our young mums prefer less no hair. That's the kind of the point. I guess it's only trauma to the skin, isn't it? Because you're allowing infection to kind of be around there.
I think if we use again that scenario, what matters, is that your skin is ready for a blade to skin, and obviously anything that we can do to reduce the infection or the eruption of hair follicles later on. But you can't tell a woman that she can't have a waxing. You can only advise, and you can only give it, the contraindications that if you did end up having a surgical delivery, that it could obviously affect once the hair follicles are erupting again. It's a difficult one, but it's a safe one, and we want to prevent, obviously, as much as we can. Believe me, we're all different down there, so
absolutely.
You could, if you're with your midwife and you're very worried, if you're extremely have a lot of hair, there are certain areas you can go to, because we won't cut below those lines. So every pubis is different. So depending what head of hair you've got, have that crucial conversation with your midwife at
oh goodness, this could become a byline for the session, I have to say. That's wonderful. I mean, I guess the other thing is being very aware of evidence, because this is evidence-based, the discussion we're having now. So we need to be able to say to women, because some of them aren't going to be interested in specific information, but some women are going to want to know, well, why are you saying this to me? So having the evidence makes a big difference. Now we've got and Laura Hallam says, Laura again says, funnily enough, before my first section, the hospital asked me to shave. And that was 13 years ago. Absolutely, Laura, that you're a beautiful example of how knowledge and our evidence has changed, and you know, we have to work with that and make sure your experience is as safe and good as possible. I'm very conscious, and I always say this every week, this hour is the shortest in the whole week, and I'm afraid I have to bring it to a close now. But I suspect we'll have Janine back, because I suspect there might be another book there. I don't know, but I'm just suspect that. So thank you so much, Janine, for joining us and sharing your knowledge and expertise, and actually giving us some pointers and some homework to think about. That's fantastic. Now, I'm very conscious. I want to say thank you to Janine. Thank you to Angelo, who's in the background, making sure everything's beautifully recorded for everybody to have, and for those of you who might be looking at this in a few days' time. And also to Paul in the background, making sure I'm getting questions, which is why I'm looking over there on my other screen. We'll see you next week for Anna and Sheena Barham and their special guests. So that's fantastic. Don't forget to book for the Midwifery Education Conference on the 15th of November. It's online, and there's lots of possibilities of having watching parties, which I think sounds fantastic, especially if there's tea and cakes included. I think that would make it very attractive. Got a fantastic lineup of speakers, including Fiona Gibb, Nikki Clark, Gail Johnson, James Holworth, and Dr. Yana Richards, and Anna Marsh, and Kizzy Lynch. So really worth going to see. Scottish Festival, end of the month, 28th of November, and Murrayfield in Edinburgh, if you're interested in that. Should be good. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves, stay safe and stay well. And we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you.